Welcome back.
Yes, it's time for us to get into a conversation about something very important. Of course, you know that the president and other world leaders are meeting at the Conference of Parties, number 27. And it's a very important event that's taking place, talking about climate change. But right here in Ghana, we're looking at a National Climate Change Seminar hosted by Action Aid. And we've been joined on the set this morning by Esther Ohinowa Brown, who is the Communications and PR Manager at Action Aid Ghana, as well as Ayuba Abukari, who is the Project Manager of Action Aid. Ladies and gentlemen, you're both welcome.
Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
All right.
Good morning.
So let's get right into it, okay?
Yeah.
Looking at climate change, the conversation is going on globally, everybody's talking about it. How vulnerable or exposed are we as a nation to climate change?
Thank you very much. So as a nation, we are so much exposed to climate change. We are so vulnerable. Looking at our location vis-a-vis the equator, we are located directly along the equator.
Yeah.
And so we have the direct impact of the sun on us. And because of that, any change in the climate affects us directly. And so that is naturally one of the reasons why we are vulnerable. And when it comes to our preparedness, it's also an issue. If you know that you have a problem, then you should know how to plan to actually, tackle that problem.
Yeah.
But we have not been, so consistent in our planning against or towards our vulnerability. So Ghana is vulnerable. That's why currently we are seeing these floods, we are seeing droughts, in parts of the country. And in the middle belt, that has 2 seasons. Now they are confused. They don't know
What the seasons are.
yeah, what the
Is it
season
raining
of
or it's
when
not?
and at what time one season ends and one season starts. And it's because of how vulnerable we are. So we are very vulnerable. We have not put systems in place to actually make sure that we adapt to the changes that climate brings.
Are there some groups that are more vulnerable than others?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes, as I talked about the preparedness. If you have systems that support you, you are less vulnerable. But if you don't have such systems, then you are more vulnerable.
Okay.
And so if you look at our country, we have different geographical locations and then ecological zones. So some ecological zones are more vulnerable than others.
Okay.
For instance, if you look at the northern part of Ghana, they have only one rainy season, which means that when the rain ends, they have nothing to depend on again. And so that makes them much more vulnerable. And even when you look at farmers, smallholder farmers are more vulnerable because they cultivate just some few acres of farm, and they don't have the capacity to produce more. And so when these things happen, it makes them more vulnerable. When they lose their food systems, when drought affect them, they don't have anything to live on again. Yes.
There are lots of people, a lot of Ghanaians who still don't understand what climate change is. And we've been talking about global warming, climate change for at least 20 years.
Yeah,
These conversations have been popping up in social studies. We talk about it.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's enough awareness within the populace about it?
That's a huge thing. I mean, in terms of awareness, if people are not aware of what exactly the challenge is, they wouldn't be able to effectively look at what are the adaptation methods. Climate change is not going away because we have attended 27 Conference of Parties, and it's always been wish talks. It's always been less action. Africa has been
Action Aid is here.
Africa has been calling for climate financing, but we haven't been able to do that. And these are the areas where countries help to build awareness, adaptation, because the most effective way to adapt to a situation is basically look at what are the adaptation methods that you can put in place. And so when it comes to the awareness, I know a lot of the time it's a bit technical for people to really understand what are the issues. We're talking about fossil fuel, we're talking about green gas emissions, we're talking about, it sounds too alien for the ordinary Ghanaian. But then what I want people to understand is when we're talking about climate change and its impact, the awareness level is for people to know that these are activities that has impact on your food security. Because trust me, in recent times, we started talking about Ghanaians importing fertilizers and the cost of fertilizer and farmers not having access to fertilizer. Yeah. You also realize that smallholder farmers, like my colleague talked about, do not have even the capacity, the financial capacity to purchase these fertilizers. And for us at ActionAid, we are anti-fertilizer conversation because we believe in agroecology, the use of composting to do your farming. Okay. And so when it comes to the awareness, people need to understand that, you know what, you need to pay attention to it. Pay attention to it because the scarce food that is around is because of the impact. In recent, just about a month ago, I went to some of the communities in the Bono Ahafa region where I spoke to smallholder farmers who are bearing the brunt of climate. Now, these are people who don't have enough money. They invest, let's say, about 5,000 cedis, and at the end of the day, they are dependent on the weather pattern, basically to grow the food. And so you're not going to get the food that you expect to buy in the market because that person has not been able to grow the food that is needed
because it's
for
either
our
not
consumption.
Raining enough or it's raining too much.
Absolutely.
Or, we're at the mercy of the elements.
Absolutely. And so that is where the loss and damage comes in, where we have been advocating for climate financing for communities to be able to adapt to the losses and damages. Because once somebody puts in the investment, and they are unable to yield the returns, it becomes a problem. And we need to pay attention to all that.
What are some of the things you think we've put in place in terms of our journey to try and build resilience that has brought us to this point?
If at all. Yeah. As we've been talking about preparedness, Ayuba, you mentioned that.
What are the resilience building, things that we've put in place, and where do we find ourselves now?
Okay, so for ActionAid, we have been working with smallholder farmers. Okay. Yes, and what we have been doing is trying to introduce them to agroecology, action. And so what we have been doing is to teach them how to prepare compost. Yes. Okay. So in our communities, if you go, you will see women using compost and manure. Instead of fertilizer. And for some of them who are actually committed to this, the lack of fertilizer we experience within the year did not affect them much because they have built their resilience. And then we have also supported some of them. We have supported communities with dams so that during the dry season they are able to still be in production. So if you go to the north, you have, especially in the Upper East region, you have a number of dams built by ActionAid. So these are some of the resilient practices. We have introduced them to, early maturing crops and connected them to CSIR and to support them in that. Okay. So these are some of the things we do to build the resilience of our smallholder farmers.
I want to add that also we do the community adaptation.
Yes.
So what we get the community to do is to map out. So for instance, in the last 30 years, what has been the changes you have seen within the community? Some of the communities, you realize that it started becoming drier and drier over the period. And so once the community are able to say that, okay, within the last 10 years, we have seen that our trees are diminishing, the number of trees within the community are diminishing, then they map out all these things and then we help them to build the resilience that we talk about.
So ActionAid has been doing a lot of work, and congratulations on all the work you're doing and that you will be doing in the future. But you can't do it alone. You spoke about taking action. As a nation, are we taking action? Do we have the policies to back what we need to build this resilience and really to overcome and live with climate change as it has come to us?
Yes, so Ghana, we haven't been idle. We have been doing something about climate change. you know, and in 2012 we came out with a climate adaptation policy framework, and we have been working with it. Just last year, we revised our nationally determined contributions. And in this document, we have actions we will do to adapt to climate change and actions we will do to adapt to mitigation, to mitigate climate change. But what we realized in that document is that most of the actions are more towards mitigation. But in Ghana and Global South, we don't emit much. Yeah. We just do about 4% of the emission. So why would you concentrate so much on mitigation at the expense of adaptation? But we have realized that it's because of, you know, the global policy conversation. Those who pollute much, they have the money, and they have said that we are going to put it in the mitigation, you know, fund, so that whatever you will do, you are mitigating the effect we are causing. But I think we should go beyond this. As our leaders are in COP, they should push for adaptation financing and loss and damage financing. You know, we should not be doing the business as usual, and we should be committed to this cause to make sure that we actually support our communities to adopt to climate change.
Finally, to wrap it up for us, today's program, what can people expect?
Well, so today's program, we are partnering with the University of Energy and Natural Resources, CSO RISE, as well as the University of Environment and Sustainable Development. You realize that these are key partners, because when it comes to a climate journey of the country, building the resilience, the theme of the program is actually building the resilience of Ghana through multi-stakeholder collaboration. You cannot do it alone as ActionAid, and so you will need the support of CSO, state agencies like the Environmental Protection Agency, the Ministry of Agriculture, and the rest, basically to work on how Ghana can accelerate its adaptation journey. Now, and so we are looking at what are the policies. We also know that there was a review of the national adaptation plans. What's the status of it? So we will be having a presentation on that. Where are we? We are at COP27 with a number of people, and so we need not to be having just a talk, but what are we doing basically to ensure that we build our resilience? And then also we are also looking at how can CSOs who work within the climate change space also look at putting pressure on the issue of climate financing. And for us at ActionAid, we are excited that climate financing is on the agenda of COP27, because that is where you realize that loss and damage becomes a key message for climate leaders and experts as well. So yeah, I know.
So where is it happening? What time? You said it's taken off already?
Yes.
Okay, so where and how can people
so the
participate?
event is happening at Manswick Hotel. Just this morning is Legon, and we have a virtual session, and so people can also join via our social media platforms. As well, we will be streaming live on the Citi Facebook page as well, and so yes, we'll get a number of people to view that.
Brilliant, super, fantastic. Thank you very much. Ayuba.
Thank you.
Esther, thank you very much for joining us this morning. All right, we take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. There's more to come.